Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This episode has been brought to you by the Wine to Wine Business Forum 2022. This year will mark the 9th edition of the forum to be held on November 7th and 8th of 2022 in Verona, Italy. This year will be an exclusively in-person edition. The main theme of the event will be all-round wine communication. Tickets are on sale now, so for more information, please visit us at winetowine.net.
Thanks for tuning in to Get U.S. Market Ready with Italian Wine People on the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Steve Raye, your host, and this podcast features interviews with the people actually making a difference in the Italian wine market in America, their experiences, challenges, and personal stories. And I'll be adding a practical focus to the conversation based on my 30 years in the business. So if you're interested in not just learning how, but also how else, then this pod is for you. Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Get U.S. Market Ready with Italian Wine People on the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Steve Raye, your host, and my guest this week is Emilia Marinig of Querciabella in Tuscany, Chianti. And Emilia, welcome to the show.
Hello, Steve. Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for having me.
It's been a challenge getting together. I think we've been trying to set this up for a couple of months, but I'm really happy to have you on the show and talk about a winery that I think is pretty definitive for the region. So why don't you give us a brief background on you and your career in the wine industry, and then we'll get into Querciabella.
All right. So essentially, how much time do I have? So I actually started working in this industry about 20 years ago. And I think I started as many of us did, just because I was very interested in wine, and I don't come from a wine family or anything. I come from a wine region, which is Friuli, and I always like to talk about that. But, I got interested in wine. I didn't think back then I could make a profession out of it. So I studied marketing instead. So I went for a marketing degree. And after that, I actually realized that, the wine could actually give me work, could be something that I could do not only for pleasure, but, also as a business venture. And I actually started working as an expo manager for a winery in Friuli. And after a while, I kind of, I stepped up a little bit, and I was in charge of Asian markets and business development in Asia. And after that, it was step by step, I actually integrated more of a marketing role, more of marketing responsibility into the role. And then eventually, when I moved in the UK, I started working for a wine distributor based in London. And that's how I met Querciabella, because we were the importers and distributors of Querciabella in the UK. And actually, the company is still the sole distributor of Querciabella in the UK. So after a few years of doing that, Querciabella popped the question. Like, they were looking for someone to take over their marketing and communication. And I think I left some good memories of the time I was working for the distributor, and eventually they offered me a position, and so I started.
So you moved from London to back to Italy.
That was quite a recent move, because I kind of got stuck in the middle during the pandemic. I was supposed to move to Italy a little bit earlier than what I did in reality. So I just moved this year back to Italy after 14 years almost in the UK. So,
well, maybe we'll touch on that at the end about what that experience is like. But let's focus on the winery now. Can you give us a brief profile of Querciabella, size, what defines it?
So I think that, for people in the wine business, Querciabella is quite a name that you associate with sustainability and ecological agriculture and viticulture. Because we started, if I compare our history, actually, the history of Querciabella with some of our neighbors who have been in Chianti Classico for like 16 generations or something like that, we are very rich. I always make jokes about the fact that we don't have 8 surnames and we don't own a castle, So that gives you indication of what you are in Chianti Classico, let's say. So we started very recently compared to that, because we started in 1974 as an official year of foundation. And the ownership is actually, it's not from Tuscany. So it's a family that came from Milan area. So Giuseppe Castiglioni is was the founder of Querciabella, an extremely wealthy and how can I say, very well connected businessman that invested into wine. And the reason why I invested into, into Chianti Classico and into building a winery in Chianti Classico was because he was a big, huge, I would say, wine lover and collector, private collector. And he was especially keen on Burgundy, and that's kind of a reference and an inspiration for much of the things that we do at Querciabella. But as I was telling in the beginning, probably the thing that we stand out the most, actually, our winemaking practices, our viticultural and winemaking practices, because we became organic quite early on. Again, it's probably fair to say the end of the 80s, when there wasn't a certification yet for viticulture. There were the first protocols on the European level about organic farming, for example. So our stance since those years was actually to limit the impact and the use of, for example, chemicals or any substances that were used and are still used in conventional agriculture. So I think it's fair to say again that we were one of the first wineries to do so in Tuscany and probably in Italy as well. In 20 into the year 2000, sorry, came the conversion to biodynamics, and we've been strictly biodynamic for about 10 years. And the latest biggest change that we have introduced at Querciabella is the plant-based conversion. So Querciabella is 100% vegan. So not only when it comes to winemaking practices, so obviously we don't use any animal byproducts throughout winemaking. We also do not use any animal-based product in the vineyard. So no manure, no preparations, nothing as such. And I think that's kind of like what really distinguishes us from the rest. So it's this combination of different practices and philosophies that we apply in both in the vineyards and in the cellar. Minimal intervention is a good word also to describe what we do.
Okay, give us a sense of the brands that you have and the relative pricing in the U.S.
So, okay, our portfolio, I mean, in the US is quite well spread out, I would say, from, for example, our best selling wine in terms of numbers is Mongrana, which I think retails for just below the $20 mark on a shelf. And then we go up to obviously our top ranges, which includes our super Toscans like Amartina and Palafreno and Batard, which is probably the wine that that brings the Querciabella tag around, and they would go for hundreds of dollars, I guess.
Your importer in the U.S. is Maison Marque and Domaine, MMD, as you call it. Give us a history of that and what role they play. I have a couple of specific questions about it, but just give us perspective on why Maison Marque and Domaine and your thoughts on them as an importer.
Obviously, we are very, very happy to be represented and imported by MMD US, which I think it's one of the greatest names in wine for the US. And our cooperation is pretty steady. We are, of course, part of quite a large portfolio of brands, which includes some of the best Italian brands, like, for example, Pio Cesare. It's one of our friends on the portfolio. And of course, all the brands that naturally belong to MMD, their own estate. So it's a great portfolio. It's obviously you're looking probably some of the most premium brands that are distributed there, and we are very steady in terms of both our positioning and our overall sales. We let's say year after year on year, we are quite in a stable position, I would say. For us, consider that for us, the US is the number one market in terms of volume. and I think it's still in terms of value. But even though Italy this year is, it's advancing very fast for us.
Now, how long have you been with MMD?
I think it's probably over 10 years now, because now it's 2022, about 10 years, yeah, something like that.
One of the others that they import is Livio Faluga, and I'm
Yeah,
very familiar with that brand.
it's very close to home for me, Visa Faluga as well.
Well, I was going to say there's the Friuli connection, and I know Andrea Faluga, and I have a funny but off-color story, which unfortunately I can't say over the air. But anyone who meets me in person, I'll tell you that story, and I guarantee you will laugh. But I think the quality of the brands that are in their portfolio are really, really significant.
I mean, I just name a few of them. I'm gonna apologize to all French nationals because my French is really bad. I think it's Roderer, but again, I do apologize for the bad pronunciation, as well as Delas, and I mean they're all great brands, I have to say. So we can only be pleased. Of course, Petrusa was forgetting about probably the main one, but
Yeah, I'm looking at the list and going, wow, boy, great. Codestranol, Dominus in the U.S.
you think of Chateau
Yeah,
Petrus and and think also about the big brands that they carry. But you have there you go with Italy. I think is very well represented as well by obviously Querciabella, but you named a few. Castiglione del Bosco is another one, and then you look at the Californian operations and Inniskillen from Canada and the house wine. So it's great to be in great company. And I think that for us, it's very important to work with such a partner in a large market that is as the US, because they understand very well what it means to carry a brand that, delivers quality, delivers prestige, but also it needs to be treated in a certain way. And by treated, I really refer to, especially positioning. So fortunately, even though with wines like Mongrana, we try to get to the everyday consumers and to be, in larger retailers as well. I think that most of Querciabella wines find their own, natural fitting in restaurants, especially the ideas of the restaurant trade.
that was going to be one of my questions. So, speaking of that, you've been watching the U.S. market for a long time. Your English is great. What are the changes that you're seeing in the U.S. market, particularly in terms of how consumers find out about wine and the role overall of communication? One of the new tools that actually I'll be giving a presentation on at Wine to Wine in Verona in November is on podcasting. Obviously, we're on a podcast now. Are you guys doing anything with podcasting?
So we kind of try to get into that, you guess it, through the pandemic. So both podcasting and, video interviews or, online tasting and all of these type of activities. But unfortunately, we don't have much resources that we can put in that side of communications. We're very happy to participate into interviews, for example. So we try to do that as much as we can. We always kind of try to make ourselves available, even though it might take a little bit of time. But eventually, we're always keen on interviews. I think that podcasting is it's a serious thing to do. I mean, meaning that it takes the experience, it takes the right skills to do that. It takes also the right type of presence, if you like. So I'm not sure if I start doing podcasting, how many people are going to turn up, to be honest. Just listen to me talking about Querciabella. And maybe I'm wrong, but in general, we notice that it's better to do this type of things with a professional like yourself, for example, or others that we have encountered, globally. I have a very good friend who's based in Friuli by chance. He's based in Friuli that is doing podcasting to a really high level, and it's always a pleasure to support him. I'm a big listener, for example, of the Italian wine podcast. I don't think I have missed one since the beginning. But to do it ourselves, I feel we're just not, prepared enough to do that in a way.
Yeah, and I don't think it's warranted for an individual brand. I mean, I'm still struggling. I'm trying to put this presentation together and trying to figure out what role does podcasting play. And I think it's kind of an evolution of what used to be wine magazines, printed magazines. The difference being, obviously, this is an interview format and it's a conversation as opposed to just an article or somebody kind of interviewing somebody and then writing a piece out of it.
I think that honestly speaking, you are looking at, at least three good, uh, let's say, three good points about podcasting. First of all, is seriously giving a voice, because you might read an interview, you might read about someone, and it's very much your perspective as a reader, let's say. But when you hear someone speaking, talking, you can hear the tone of voice, you can understand, much more about the person, and well, talking about brands, also the brands they represent. I think that carries a value, which is a much more personal appeal, if you like.
Yeah, and I think that's my point about conversations. And one of the points I'm going to make is that the web is all about conversations. Markets are conversations, and we have to speak like humans, not the way I used to write press releases. I mean, this conversation is getting more into details with you giving your own personal experience rather than it going through me as a filter. And I think that's significant. I look at it as much more journalism than promotional. But take it the next step. You had mentioned earlier in a conversation we had that you have an interest in influencers in terms of trade leverage. Obviously, Querciabella has a lot of street cred in the U.S. You have a history of presence in the U.S., great brand resonance with consumers. What are you guys doing from the point of view of trade leverage now that's different than, say, before COVID?
Italian Wine Podcast. If you think you love wine as much as we do, then give us a like and a follow anywhere you get your pods.
So I think that if you are thinking specifically about the role of influencer, for example, which has been like one of the buzzwords in marketing in recent years, let's say, I think, what, let's say when I joined Querciabella, let's say, let's just take a step back. I think there was very much the years when the influencers started making an appearance, and when brands started to understand how actually to use influencers to their own advantage. I'm always being quite, by nature, I think, a quite careful person. So I never get very excited at first. So it takes me a little bit of time to excite me. So I always ask myself, what is your objective? So let's talk about brand resonance, for example. If my objective would be brand resonance, is it fair? Is it good? Is it a good idea to put my money with, let's say, an influencer that has 40,000 followers or 100,000 followers, but that maybe it's just standing in front of a camera, making like very nice videos and very funny videos and showing my bottle around. Is that gonna seriously generate an uplift in both sales and the positioning of my wines? My answer is I don't think so. But supposingly that, for example, I'm rebranding or I'm launching a new product and I want this product to be seen by as many persons as possible, then that would make a lot of sense. And I'm just talking about traditional influencer. So seriously, the one that spread the glasses around and show amazing pictures of amazing vineyards, but any vineyards look a little the same from afar and stuff like that. I'm not sure that brings value to my brand, especially with Querciabella. So then I ask myself, what are really influencers in the wine trade? My answer is people that can help you move the wine in terms of, like, again, moving up, this is my positioning, or broadly expanding, and this is my turnover. And I ultimately think is that people that have leverage in this industry. And that could be anyone from a journalist, maybe not a traditional journalist, but someone that writes about wines, or someone that talks about wines. Why not? And or that could be someone that has been working in the industry for 20 years and has been working in the best, just making an example, best restaurants in New York, as a SOM or a head of buying or a beverage, food and beverage manager. So, been working a long career. He has a reputation, is trusted by his peers, but also, he helps the trade grow in experience and in knowledge. So these are for me the great influencers. And we are talking about the US market in this conversation that we are having, but I think that very much applies in many of the mature markets. Sorry. So I consider the US to be quite mature, as I would consider the UK, for example, where you have quite a good knowledge on an average, so that you can tell your wife from your red and your probably your Chianti from your Pinot Grigio. So I think that's what really, that was my answer when, as I said, 3 years ago, I started looking at, social media and digital media for Querciabella. Because everyone wants to work with Querciabella. That's a different, also another fact.
Right. So talk more about that. What kind of digital things are you guys doing? Can you speak about one or two initiatives?
Absolutely. But first of all, just before COVID started, we had this great idea of starting a wine club, and let's say we're starting getting, putting our hands down on email marketing. So we have this email marketing program that, is basically a newsletter that alternates news from Querciabella with, special offers and special releases of some of our iconic wines. And that goes out currently to more than a few hundreds of people. And the US, gonna be surprised to hear that, in terms of demographics, is the number one market for email marketing from Querciabella Direct.
I would believe that.
Even, don't get me wrong, it doesn't translate into the number of sales that we do, because probably we sell more to European-based customers rather than US-based customers. But a lot of people from the US sign up to the newsletter. They like to be engaged with the brand. They like to know what's going on. Then they might, go out to their local shop or to the local restaurants and buy and find Querciabella there. I'm not saying that we are shipping.
Or ask for it if it's not there.
Exactly. So that's absolutely, it's a really good way to actually get in touch with your customer base. We are not very invasive, because also you see the digital marketing operations here. I'm the one that is actually handling that with the aid of a graphic designer and another person that help me with the more technical side of things. But it's small operations, and we're not very invasive as I was telling you. So it's not a weekly newsletter. We try to communicate when there is something that is worth communicating, as well as when we are close to the point of a new wine release, or we are about to release a vertical case of Camartina or Batar or something like that. And I think that the customers really appreciate that. They appreciate it because it's timely, it's very direct communications, come from us. It's a way, as I said, to keep in touch. Most of the people that sign up for the newsletter are actually people that have been at Querciabella. They visited those. We obviously come from an area which is Chianti Classico, where nowadays in September we are flooded with American tourists. They drive around, they come up to see us. They like to explore the territory, and they are very keen on signing up. So I would say, to give you a comparison, if I approach an Italian person, an Italian consumer, and I say, "Would you like to sign up to my newsletter?" Chances are they're gonna say, "Maybe no, maybe let us think about it. I'll let you know." US people are actually very adamant to it. I think that they are used to the concept of wine club and direct sales, because you've done a hell of a job, great job, especially in Napa, creating this type of experiences for consumers. So you're naturally more inclined and less suspicious, when they sign up.
I think that's really well stated. I think and that's really important. So, but let me jump to the fundamental question. Okay, so somebody's been to the winery, great. You captured their email address, great. You turned them from someone who is aware of the brand all the way into someone who is an evangelist for the brand, wonderful as well. You have some of these wines. What if they live in North Dakota? How do you get the wines to somebody from all these first places in the U.S.?
And that's the biggest, not problem, because I would say challenge, depending where obviously this person is located in the US, there are different regulations that regulates the distribution of wine. And also, we are talking about not only restrictions in terms of what you can do and you cannot do, but also for example, delivery times are also vary a lot from country to country. And then again, because we trust our distributors very much. So MMD is anyway our operational arm, if you like, in the US. We always try to figure out a way or make a suggestion like you can find our wines this and there. And if that's not possible, we collaborate with a local courier that more or less works with everyone in county because that's how we do it, and we try.
Local in Chianti or local in the U.S. You're talking about the local courier.
We go through always have sorry, I'm talking about the local courier in county because they are the ones that actually handle the delivery from us. It's a little bit of a strange system because as a winery, I cannot ship directly to the US. That would not be allowed by costumes, by the regulation and stuff like that. So the local courier does the shipping for us. It's a very bizarre way to do that. It's totally legal, by the way. Even if we are in Italy, there's the tendency of, let's say, in Italy, there's always a tendency of finding a way. If there's a will, there's a way. Should be the motto of Italians, I think. You know what I mean? We all have it. So the way that we work is actually so you come to see Querciabella, for example. Let's talk about the physical visit. You taste the wine, you like the wine, you want to have them shipped back to the US. You basically pay the wine to Querciabella, and we make sure that the price the consumers pay at Querciabella is not gonna, screw up distribution channel. I have bad news for the people that drive up to Querciabella to buy our wines. You're not really saving much money, but the experience is great. But so obviously you buy what would be the equivalent of retail price in Italy, and that's the money goes straight to Querciabella. Obviously, invoice and scontrino and everything else, and then you fill up a form that is provided by the courier, and it's almost like you are shipping the wines to yourself. So it's the American client that fills in the form with their own, data. The form goes to the courier, and it's the courier that emails, for example, the pay by link directly to the client. So we don't get paid for the delivery of the wine. We have very little control on the delivery, and that unfortunately is a problem, especially nowadays, which you have like longer delivery terms and becoming a little bit more difficult to ship around the world, I think, in general terms. So we don't have control on that. I can only email you, the tracking number, but or help you to see where you find wines. But it's very much the courier handling the shipment, and that's a big limitation.
Yeah, and that's primarily for people who visited the winery. What I would like to know more about is how you're handling e-commerce to the rank and file of American consumers who may find it.
It's basically the same thing, but instead of handing you the form, I pass your details to the courier, and the courier is sending you a pay by link by email, and you fill it.
Okay, so it's not necessarily being managed by Maison Market and Domain through their e-commerce solutions and distributions. Wow.
But don't get me wrong, obviously, this is a scenario that we face in all markets because what you are telling me is basically why don't isn't it creating a little bit of a damage to M&D in a way, not a damage, but it's preventing them from doing some sales. And any market could actually ask the same thing. But we are very careful about how we sell the wines, and by how I mean how much we sell it for. So again, I'm not sure that it's actually cheaper to buy from here and from our e-commerce. If you count in what you're gonna spend in terms of duties. So that's a very important thing. And also, we choose to release very specific things via our e-commerce and our wine club. So you obviously, if you go on Querciabella web shop, You see certain references, and that's usually the current vintages that we display, that we put there on display. And again, these are the prices that you probably pay for if you go to a local bar, yeah, to an enoteca, let's say in Italy. But this is the tip of the iceberg for us, because how I really deliver value to my clients via email marketing and online sales is by releasing these special offers that we do on a almost regular basis, things that they cannot find on the market, or that they could find it very rarely. Let's say I'm talking about back vintages, for example.
So, are you available on things like wine.com, Drizzly? Are you on Wine Searcher?
Yes, we are. I mean, they are, and perhaps not the full range, because obviously that's very much, as we were saying, depending on the positioning of each wine and of each reference. But especially for Mongrana and Chianti Classico, those are the two references that you are most likely to encounter there. And then obviously we work with the traditional brick and mortar, shops very well, because I don't think one without the other, by the way. So
You talked a little bit about social media and getting closer to your consumers, and we were talking about the impact of wine influencers. But what kind of social media programs are you running, and do you run that from Italy, or is that something that your importer and distributors manage for you in the US?
so everything we do in terms of communication and marketing runs by me, I would say, but also starts from here and is handled by us directly. So if usually obviously decide a yearly calendar of activities, and that includes also the social media editorial calendar and the things that we're gonna do, the activities we're gonna do social media wise, and then obviously we benefit from what our distributors or our partners worldwide could do. But in terms of social media communications, we decide and we handle that. It's almost a sort of like
Okay, so what platforms are you working with?
mainly for us, Instagram is the biggest. Not the biggest in terms of followers, but in terms of, let's say, interactions and the type of exposure that we have. Facebook, I think, is still for us leading in terms of numbers, but it's going down. Actually, it's not going down. It's being stable, and it's Instagram that for us does the most part. Also, because I think that we put a lot of emphasis at Querciabella on how things look like. So, of course, our number one priority is to make the best wines possible, but also we present them in a certain way. And I think that the visual impact that Instagram offers fits us very well. We are not on any of the younger type of platform. I say younger, but
TikTok, yeah.
but again, I think that we're also very traditional in the way that we portray ourselves as a brand. So I would say that Instagram for us is the main social media channel, and then we do a hell of a job too on our website as well, in terms of keeping our the copywriting is a big part of what we do at Querciabella, as well as keeping the information up to date. So I think for us, the three main digital channels are the website, the newsletters, and the Instagram.
Okay, one last thing that you had mentioned, and I was curious about, and we didn't really talk about it in our initial conversation, about a guest taster program. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so it's actually a program that we started in Italy at the beginning of, well, across, let's say, 2020 and 2021, 2022. It's basically we got in touch with an influencer in Italy. I think that she's proud to go by the name influencer, which is Simona Geri. And we kind of, up to the point, actually, let me say up to that point. So, yeah, up to the point, sorry, we didn't really have tasting notes at Querciabella. We never believed in having tasting notes, because we always give the opportunity to people that buy our wines, to taste our wines, and so on and so forth, to tell us, or to tell themselves, oh yeah, this, looks like this, smells like that, and tastes like that. We never like to actually put it, as a dictate, because some company, might like to do that, but we never believed that was worthwhile. And then, we kind of met Simona, and we were very keen on the way that she actually tastes the wine, evaluates the wine. She's a nice sommelier, and she has all, actually the technical skills to do a proper evaluation. So we kind of said like, hey, why don't you write the tasting notes for us? So why don't you act like our guest taster? Might have some good tasters at the winery, including obviously our winemaker, our global sales director, and much of my colleagues, to be honest with you. But we wanted also to have an outside voice, because again, I can give you indication about how this wine is gonna feel and how this wine is gonna taste, but I think it always gives a different angle if someone else does that. So we kind of done that for a few months with Simona, and I'm very much looking to export that concept, because obviously, I'm looking at a global stage. I would very much like to engage with someone who's US based, sorry, for the first year, and then looking at some. I try to think it as a traveling role. So find, every year finding someone that can be a good advocate for Querciabella, a good, good ambassador, if you like. And again, he has to be someone that has the experience, the technical skills to do that. So that's a very important thing for us. He has to be someone that has, as I said, the experience, the leverage as well, because our wines deserve that. We deserve that as a brand.
One of the things I like to do when I end the conversation is talk about what's the big takeaway. We've touched on a whole bunch of different subjects. Um, a lot of it is new, even though you and I have talked a couple of times before. What's the big takeaway for somebody in the trade who would be listening to this conversation that they could put to use immediately, either from things that you've talked about that you guys are doing that they could copy or revise, or something new about the brand that you think can make a difference to the brand sales in the U.S.? What's the big takeaway?
I think that especially if we are talking about direct to consumers type of communication, the number one thing that you need to make sure of is that you are relevant to the people you talk to. So you need to understand very well who's your audience. You cannot talk to everyone, or better, you can talk to everyone, but not everyone is going to be interested. So there's not going to be value in reaching 1 million people if out of these million people only 5 respond to your message. And by respond, I don't mean answer, but they respond in an emotional, in a personal way. So it's very important that you understand who's your target, and that your communication is always relevant to the target. So it might be worth for a brand to be on TikTok, it might not be. It might be more important for you, to have a website that is functional to your trade partners, for example, rather than plenty of nice pictures and nice buzzwords. It's always about, delivering, and that's not just me saying, it's the marketing, science that says that. Deliver the right message to the right people. That's through the right ways, the right means, let's say. So you can choose as well as a brand. It's not because social media are big for the majority of people that you need to be big on social media to be successful as a communicator or as a brand. You have to choose what you do, and do that well. We've come to the end of our session today. So a big thank you to Emilia Marinig. It's been a challenge to get this done, but we did. Thank you very much. And tune in next week to get U.S. market ready with Italian wine people on the Italian Wine Podcast for another interesting interview with somebody in the business. This is Steve Raye. See you next week.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode brought to you by the Wine to Wine Business Forum 2022. This year will mark the 9th edition of the forum, to be held on November 7th and 8th, 2022, in Verona, Italy. Remember, tickets are on sale now, so for more information, please visit us at winetowine.net. Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.